This is our typical eBay purchase that we're going to try and restore over the winter, and show you what you need to know and take a look at taking it apart and rebuilding it. So first of all, we've put it on our ramp. Before you put it on the stand, I'll definitely check your suspension just to make sure it goes up and down smoothly, not stiff or bouncy, and the same on the front. We normally work from the rear of the machine to the front or front to the rear, but today I'm going to start at the back and we're going to start with tyres. These are slightly low, but you're not looking for any cracking, bulging or tears. And just go right the way round, keep looking across the whole of the tyre. If you get to the edge here, you can see that there's some slight cracking just here. So I'll generally replace these tyres. And again, you'll check on the other side. And checking the wheel rim for any dents, bulges, cracks again, and just checking that it's true. Now, on a steel rim, you will have a little bit of flex, but you shouldn't expect any more than about 4mm. Next, I'll check the spokes. Now, to do this, you can do it two ways. You can check the flex in every single one, which I'd recommend, but you can also just use a screwdriver and check for a different tone. If you're getting a different tone that's different to the others, you know that you've probably got a loose spoke. I'm going to show you how to check your spokes. They should all be tight and uniform, and you'll feel it in your fingers. So I'll show you how you do it. If you see that they're flexing at the same rate and they feel quite stiff, you just go around on every individual pair, just checking them like this. If you see here, this one has got a lot of flex in it. So you know that it needs adjusting because it's loose. And that can also cause problems if it breaks or anything like that, so it's something you need to address. So use your spoke tool, and we're going to adjust the spoke, which will be in this way, and you'll feel it's starting to tighten up. Just keep going until you feel a bit of resistance. And when you feel a slight bit of resistance, just stop and recheck the tension. And you can see now that this spoke still got a tiny little bit of play, but it's better than before, so you know you're going in the right direction. And just turn it. It's great. And again, just continue to check to make sure that you haven't got any other loose ones. And again, we're going to look at the inner tube as well and the valve, just to make sure there's no leaks or anything else. That looks okay. So we've checked the tyre, the rim, the spokes. So now we're just going to make sure that the wheel bearing's okay. And to do that, just hold the wheel in like a 6 o'clock motion, and you just push and pull with one hand to the other. And obviously you can see a little bit of movement here, but that's just the stand moving, and you would definitely feel, you know, like a clonk there, so that's fine. Just check it in 3 places, just to make sure. And again, there we go. Okay, there is a slight bit of movement here, but nothing to be concerned about on this bike. So if you just turn the wheel slowly, just making sure you've not got any graunchiness or grinding, which we haven't, so that wheel bearing's okay. So we've checked the rear, and now we've worked our way to the front of the vehicle. Again, it's pretty much similar to the checking the back. We're just going to look at the front tyre, again for any cracks or bulges, tears, anything like that. So we're just going to go through that. Just looking for any cracks in the sidewall, but this tyre looks quite good. And again on the other side, no problems there at all. Again, we're going to check the spokes like we did on the rear. We did that on both sides. Now we're going to check the steering bearings. So you just want to obviously support the vehicle, make sure it's securely strapped down. And you just turn them gently from side to side. Pay particular attention to the centre. You don't want any notches or grooves, which these feel fine. And just give it a good turn. They're fine. And lastly, just grab the bottom of the forks and just give it a gentle pull, just to check in for any movement. Now there is movement coming from this one, which that's only coming from the stand. So they're absolutely fine. That's the front end checked. So I'm going to show you how to adjust your drive belt and check the operation of it. So first of all, we need to undo the two Zeus fasteners, very similar to on the other side. Just to push in, quarter of a turn, and then pop out. And the same on the other side. Just give the case a little wiggle and it'll come off. Pop that there, and this is our drive belt. Now, when we're looking at the drive belt, we're looking for cracks, any nasty tears, and some wear. So you just run through it. So we're just looking on the inner edge of the belt, just here for any tears or cracks, any sign of wear or damage. Yeah, and then we're just going to have a look here, just to make sure there isn't any thread, again, wear or damage on the belt. So now we're just going to check the measurement, 10 or 20 mil, and as you can see, it's far beyond that, so we're going to adjust it up. So first of all, you need to undo 4 bolts, your top bolt and your bottom bolt, and again on the other side, and use a 13 mil socket, and you undo them anti-clockwise, or as I say, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. And again on the bottom. So now you can see that we can move the drive belt. And as we move it back, you can see the tension getting better. So all we need to do is pull it back, and you see the markings on here. When you tighten it up, you just make sure that they're even both sides. Obviously when you're tightening these, torque them up to what's specified in your workshop manual. And again, we're going to tighten the ones up on the other side. We can just check our measurement now to make sure it's within the 10 to 20 mil measurement. That seems fine. It's also best to check it with someone sitting on the vehicle, but we've got a good amount of adjustment there. And I say check the drive belt. So we're going to take a quick look at the shock absorber. Just firstly making sure it's securely mounted. So we're going to use a 17 mil spanner on the ring side. And just give it a little tweak, just to make sure it's tight. And then again on the bottom. It is. You haven't got a lean on it or anything like that, or over tighten any bolts. And just look at the coil spring here. We're just looking for any rust, cracks or damages, anything that doesn't look right. This one seems fine. Now if you look into this part here, onto the stanchion, you're just looking for any wear marks, hitting, and any signs of oil. If you've got oil on there, it means that the shock absorber seal could be leaking, but this one looks fine. So I'm happy with the rear shock. Next, we're just going to check the drive chain that actually links the pedals to the rear wheel, which is also a method that you use to start this moped. First of all, you've got 2 Zeus fasteners here and here, which they undo quite easily. Just use a flat bladed screwdriver, push and turn, and you see that they pop out. And the same again on this one. Once they're out, just give it a little pull, and you see that the cover comes off, and there's your 2 Zeus fasteners. Now looking at the chain system, be aware you don't want to get your fingers caught in there, because you probably will end up without a finger. Now what we're looking for is any damage to the links and to the sprockets, no hooking effect, and just general wear and tear. Now if we turn it round, you may see that it's all turning okay and nothing's broken. This one looks quite fine. We've got this lever here. If you lift it up, it engages the engine to the pedals to start it and obviously to pull away. If you put it down, it disengages it and you can use it as a push bike. So this is the pedal disengaged, so you can turn it like a bicycle. So yeah, that's your chain system. So next we're going to do something a little bit more interesting than just checking tyres and adjusting a belt. We're actually going to remove the frame from the engine and clean the carburetor, because if you bought a winter bike that's been sitting around for a long time, you're going to need to clean the carburetor. So I'm going to show you how you do it. So first of all, we're just going to take these covers off, disconnect the cables that link the engine to the frame, and I'll show you the process to do that. Now it's a good idea to get yourself a little pot or something similar that you can put all your nuts and bolts in so you know where they go. If you're not quite sure, it's always good, you can either take a photo or label them. So this is what I do, I'll put them in a pot. So this is one part that's taken off. Any parts that you take off, always sort of try and put in an area where you're not going to tread on them or trip on them. So in this case, I'm just going to put them on my workbench. So we've got all the electrical connectors for the bike. These will need to be disconnected to allow us to remove the frame. Pay attention because you may need to label these with masking tape. Okay, so that's them disconnected and out of the way. Next we're going to take the fuel line off, so ensure that your fuel tap is off. This is the off position. If you take it off with it on, you're going to get petrol everywhere, so make sure you pay attention to that. Just going to get a pair of long nose pliers to just help pry off the fuel hose. So gently, just get the fuel pipe, move the clip forward, and it comes off. You will get a couple of drips of fuel out of there, but you don't want it pouring out. So, going to disconnect the throttle cable. It's just this little screw here. So if we undo this, and then I'll show you how to get it off. Anti-clockwise, just nip it. Don't take the screw all the way out because you'll probably drop it. You only need to undo it a few turns. And then if you just get a pair of long nose pliers, and pull the cable back through. And there we have it. This one's a little bit frayed, but we can trim that down, that's not a problem. Next we're going to disconnect the decompressor cable. Okay, so if you just grab the cable here and just give it a small pull and then pull it down, it will release from the lever and then it just slots out like that, as you can see. And then we're just going to disconnect it at the bottom so that it's completely free. So we're going to remove the fuel tank now, which is two 10mm bolts on this side and on the other side. So we've disconnected the decompressor cable at the top, and we're going to disconnect it at the bottom. If you look here, you can see where it mounts in. It's just a simple case, pushing it up, pulling it round, and presto, it's off. Next, we're just going to make sure there's nothing else holding it on. Got one more cable coming down, which is the rear brake cable. So we'll disconnect that at the top. Okay, to disconnect that, you'll need an 8mm and a 10mm spanner. You're just loosening it off, anti-clockwise, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. Just wind it in. Okay, let's put a bit of slack in it now, so that we can disconnect it at the rear. Just grab it with a pair of pliers, push the arm forward, and the cable is released. There. Okay, we're going to need to remove this adjuster. Okay, so that's the cable removed. Removing the cable so it's not getting in the way. Next we're going to look into unbolting the shock absorbers and the engine mounting and actually removing the frame from the engine. So make sure you secure the vehicle down, especially before you start to undo the suspension components, because it can become insecure and fall over. So just make sure you've got it strapped down. Firstly, we're going to remove the lower shock mounting, and the same on the other side, because you can see this is where it's linked to the engine. So we'll just undo this one and the one on the other side. Okay, so we're going to undo the lower shock mounting bolt. There we go. And there we go, it's out. So we'll do the same on the other side. Now as this one comes out, just be aware that the bike will wiggle around a little bit. That's why we have to strap it down. Okay, next we're going to do the top engine mount, lower the bike down, and you'll see the chassis coming off the engine. And when this bolt comes out, beware because the back will drop down a little bit, so your assistant will need to be ready. Okay, so it's out with its washer. Put it in your pot. Now before you start wandering around trying to get it off, just make sure your path is clear, that you're not going to trip or anything like that, and find a place to put your chassis. So lift it off. Right, so we're going to take our carburetor off and give it a clean, because most of the time that they've been sitting around, your fuel will probably gone stale. So while you're here, you might as well clean it, and I'm going to show you how to do that. There's 4 bolts here on top of the reed housing that we're going to unbolt. We'll remove the carburetor and take a little look. So undo these 4 bolts, do them in a crisscross pattern. Lightly pull your tubes out. One thing I should mention is that get a clean piece of tissue or rag just to put into the intake area, just to stop any foreign bodies or nasty stuff getting in there. So you just pop it in like that. This is where the airflow blows through. It's drawn through from the engine. So we're going to give this a good clean and just make sure that it's working correctly. To remove the float bowl of the carburetor, it's 2 Phillips head screws, and we're just going to remove them and have a look inside. So if we take a look, you can see it's pretty nasty in there. We're going to just clean up some of this off fuel and a little bit of rust. And also we're going to clean the jet out on the carburetor and just inspect the float needle. First of all, we'll just use some airtake cleaner or carburetor cleaner. And we'll just squirt it into the float bowl. I'm just going to pull this little pin out and lift up and remove the float needle. Be careful not to drop it or lose it. And we're just looking to make sure this little spring part is working and there's no grooves on the actual seat. This is where the fuel enters the carburetor and is regulated by the actual float. This works in a way a bit like your toilet ballcock. So it just, when it floats up, it shuts the valve. When it empties, it releases. So we're going to give it a squirt through our carburetor jet. I'm just making sure that it comes out the other side in there. Okay, we'll just get some clean tissue to give it a wipe over. Get your little float needle. If you see, there's a little groove there, and that just slots in there like so. And then we're just going to turn it up, dangles it down. Just plop it in.